We'll have a final question today from Mark Carter.
Mark Carter, Rail Express magazine. David, you mentioned in your, I think in response to one of the questions earlier, the issue of there are no votes in freight, and that state governments are very urban focused when it comes to their rail issues. Is there any, in order to get a greater appreciation of what rail can do, are there any benefits from the works that you're doing to make freight better that are actually sort of have flow-on effects for the urban rail networks in Australia?
Well, Mark, although I've concentrated on freight and the story around it, let me just touch a few things. The Southern Sydney Freight Line, which I've mentioned, is started construction. We finished in January 2010. Moving freight off those passenger systems outside the curfew, etc. What does that do? It actually frees up 100 passenger paths, which can be used and saves capital investment in New South Wales for 100 passenger paths outside the curfews. It actually also frees up paths around the curfews, because on the head and sides of each curfew you need to put freight trains away. So that program alone, and we haven't made a big thing of it, actually produces 100 new paths for urban passenger systems and saves New South Wales having to invest in some urban framework by us taking the freight away. The interesting thing on the Northern Sydney one, which I just want to plug again as the highest priority for rail, is Northern Sydney between Strathfield and Newcastle, that a progressive investment there, starting at $800 million and moving through to a couple of billion over 10 years to actually separate all the Central Coast through freight from the passenger system, actually also has very significant direct benefits to urban passengers, especially from the Central Coast and Hornsby back into Sydney, because again you'd start to free up 100 to 150 paths, especially in areas such as the Central Coast with a growing population and actual congestion issues of getting urban trains in and out. So each of the projects we're looking at have direct benefits to urban systems. The area we're doing in Melbourne, I mean the separation of the double tracking in and out of Melbourne. Melbourne only had one rail track into it for freight into the centre of Melbourne. We now have two developed in the last few months, and by next January we bi-directional signal that, and there will be 4 times the capacity in and out of Melbourne just by bi-directional signalling. It actually has another benefit. Some of the passenger systems that used to cross through that area, that used to go to the regional centres, will now be separated from the freight centres, again improving capacity for that framework. And lastly, the Victorian government handing over the broad gauge track and standard gauging, and us standard gauging it, has now produced a situation where in fact a number of standard gauge passenger trains will run more frequently and more reliably in Victoria on that line, with a direct benefit to passenger services in regional Victoria. So there are kick-off benefits which flow through, even though your focus is on one element. The kick-off benefits do have value, and therefore you can actually have win-win frameworks by addressing freight and seeing it as valuable as many times as passengers.
Thank you very much. David Marchant, thank you very much. We haven't had an all trains experience for a while, and it's been very instructive, I can assure you. We'd like you to have the souvenir of the occasion and a membership ticket which might bring you back with a progress report sometime in the next year or so. Thank you very much.